on, YouTube? So coming back today, got my top 30 outfielders. So yesterday I did my top 10 third basemen. If you have not seen that video yet, go check it out. I'll put the link to the entire playlist of my rankings in the description below. So officially done with the infield yesterday, and like I said, I'm going to do all the outfielders at once today. I didn't really want to separate them out. I thought it'd be better just to do it in one video. Now obviously this one's going to be a little bit longer than normal. I am doing 30 players, but I'm going to try to go as quickly as I possibly can. So start with, I'm going to do 5 outside instead of 3 outside. So first one, I have the Miami Marlins Christian Yelich. So Yelich was a reliable player for the Marlins last year, at least while the time he was actually playing, and hit a very solid 300 with 7 home runs, 44 RBIs, and 6 stolen bases. Now, if he can get over 500 at-bats this year, I think this is a guy that could reach double digits in home runs and still kind of bat around the same area. I don't think he's ever going to be a guy that's going to get you 20 home runs, 80 RBIs, that sort of guy, but he also will get you a respectable amount of stolen bases with 16, and you can never argue with the guy that's hitting over 300. So, move on to my next player on the 5 outside, and I have a guy that had a very much down year in 2015, and that is Yasiel Puig. So, the Dodgers outfielder has kind of been on a downslope statistically, I feel like, since 2014. Obviously, had a big 2013. And I don't know. I don't know if he'll be able to recover this year. I hope so. He had under 300 at-bats in 2015. Obviously ran into a lot of trouble. Had a problem with Don Mattingly for a little bit. I mean, obviously he's gone now. But got benched at one point, and I don't know. See if he can actually respond. 2015, only hit for 255, 11 home runs, 38 RBIs, 3 stolen bases. Granted, like I said, it was under 300 at-bats, so the home run and RBI numbers were going to be down anyway. So, move on to my third player, and I've got a guy that's pretty much only good for stolen bases, and that is the Cincinnati Reds' Billy Hamilton. I'm pretty sure you guys knew who I was talking about before I said the name. So, Billy Hamilton hit for 226, 4 home runs, 28 RBIs, and 57 stolen bases last year. This is a guy that had 100 stolen bases in one season in the minors. Obviously, if you need a plug-and-play in stolen bases in kind of the middle to later rounds in the draft or in your draft, then this is the guy for you. He will get you at least 50 stolen bases pretty much every year. And I mean, I just think that he's pretty much hit his peak. I wouldn't say hit his peak. That's kind of rough to say hit your peak at 226. But again, a guy that's not going to get you many home runs. I think maybe a good season he can reach maybe 250, 260. Again, never a guy that's going to get you much besides stolen bases, though. So move on to my next player on the 5 outside, and I have the New York Yankees' Jacoby Ellsbury. So Ellsbury, another guy, big household name, off-season, or kind of an off-season in 2015. 257, 7 home runs, 33 RBIs, and 21 stolen bases. So this is a guy that's going to get you over 20 stolen bases on a consistent basis, leading a Yankees outfield that is actually incredibly talented, but still obviously has a little bit of trouble, especially hanging down the stretch. Brett Gardner was kind of brutal down the stretch last year as well. So, my last player on the 5 outside is the former Milwaukee Brewer, now Oakland A, Chris Davis, with a K. So, Chris Davis hit for 246 last year, 27 home runs, 66 RBIs, and 6 stolen bases. I think that you'll see that RBI number rise a little bit with him being on the Athletics compared to him being on the Brewers. This is a guy that in under 400 at-bats hit for 27 home runs. He's obviously got major power. I think he will fit into the middle of that Athletics lineup well with a talented, with a somewhat talented bunch. I mean, I don't know. I just think the Athletics is a better fit than the Brewers this year. I think the Brew Crew is going to be one of the worst teams in the MLB this year. So, took a little bit long on the 5 outside, so move into the top 30. And at number 30, I've got the Cincinnati Reds' Jay Bruce. So I've talked about this a lot. I think that Jay Bruce is pretty much trade bait right now for the Cincinnati Reds, especially since they just dished out Todd Frazier. And Jay Bruce last year hit for 226, 26 home runs, 87 RBIs, and 9 stolen bases. I think this is a team right now building around Joey Votto and kind of living out the I think they're also trying to build around Devin Mesoraco. Now, for me, Jay Bruce is a guy that will not be on the Reds at the end of the season. This is a guy that will put major pop in the middle of really whatever lineup. I think this is a guy that can get his average numbers a little bit up. But again, this is a guy that is going to be able to get you a lot of home runs. Like I said, good pop in the middle of the lineup. So move on to number 29, and I have the LA Angels, Cole Calhoun. So Cole Calhoun's a guy that had a pretty good year last year, put up very similar numbers to Jay Bruce, a little bit better average, 256, 26 home runs, 83 RBIs, and 4 stolen bases. Obviously a little bit overshadowed by Mike Trout in the outfield, but again, guy that I think could progress in 2016, and I've mentioned this before in some of my mock drafts, guy that's a little bit of a sleeper for me this year. I wouldn't really say a huge sleeper since 26 home runs and 83 RBIs obviously already broke out last season, but I think this is a guy that could maybe even bring those numbers up a little bit this year. So move on to number 28, and I have the San Francisco Giants' Hunter Pence, whose season was cut short last year. I think he was on pace for a very good season, but nonetheless, in the time he was playing, still put up solid numbers, 275, 9 home runs, 40 RBIs, and 4 stolen bases. So move on to number 27, number 26, yeah, it is number 27, and I've got the Pittsburgh Pirates' Gregory Blanco. So one of the bigger prospects in baseball coming up last year. A guy that I think could get his numbers up this year. I think this is a guy that has not hit his ceiling yet. Like I said, one of the bigger prospects in baseball coming out last year. And last year he hit for 256, 9 home runs, 52 RBIs, and 27 stolen bases. So move on to number 26, and I have the Cleveland Indians' Michael Brantley. So Brantley last year, solid season again, hit for 310. 15 home runs, 84 RBIs, and 15 stolen bases. So I think this is a guy that's going to be reliable for you every year. And again, I'm not entirely sure on this. I haven't been paying too close attention to Michael Brantley to begin the year, but I believe this is a guy that is dealing with a little bit of injury problems heading into 2016. Yeah. So like I said, I don't know. I think it's shoulder problems. That's something I'd have to look a little bit more into though. So move on to number 25, and I have the Arizona Diamondbacks' David Peralta. So I think this is one of the better stories in baseball last year. If you ever looked into him at the middle or later stage of the season last year, he was a guy that used to work at Burger King and really broke out last year. Hit for 312, 17 home runs, 78 RBIs, and 9 stolen bases for a Diamondbacks offense that was actually very good. And basically, like, a guy that I don't know. I just have a bad feeling about David Peralta heading into this year. I think this is a Diamondbacks lineup that's been shaken up a lot, and one that's going to kind of change, or one where a lot of players are seeing change roles, and changed roles means changed stats. So, like I said, we'll see. Move on to number 24, and I have the Chicago White Sox' Adam Eaton. So, Eaton to me is a guy that is going to be one of the better players in the White Sox lineup this year. Bringing over Todd Frazier, it's going to help them out. Actually, in the USA Today preview for 2016, the White Sox actually had like 92 wins, even though they're expected by most people to be one of the worst teams in baseball. Obviously, the acquisition of Todd Frazier helps, but I don't think it's really clear what direction the White Sox are going in. To me, Adam Eaton is the best outfielder they got. Hit for 287, 14 home runs, 56 RBIs, and 18 stolen bases last year. And I think this is a guy that's still going to be getting better this year. So, move on to number 23, and I have the Washington Nationals, Ben Revere. So, I'm thinking back a little bit of a ways there. This is a guy last year that hit for 306, 2 home runs, 45 RBIs, and 31 stolen bases. and I think that this is a stolen base number that's going to stay up around that number. One of the more solid defensive outfielders in the MLB. So move on to number 22, and I have the San Diego Padres, Matt Kemp. So Kemp, a guy that I think had a pretty good rebound season last year, leading a Padres team that actually had a little bit of pressure heading into last year. They kind of had a big splash during the offseason, and really didn't have a great season. Got 2 triple digits in RBIs, hit for 265, 23 home runs, and 100 RBIs, 12 stolen bases. And again, a guy to me that can replicate those numbers this year. He's obviously shown that he's got the talent to do that on a consistent basis. So at number 21, I've got the Baltimore Orioles' Adam Jones. Adam Jones, guy that's been a mainstay star in the league for a couple of years now on a Baltimore Orioles team that's been very up and down the last few years. Hit for 269, 27 home runs, 82 RBIs, and 3 stolen bases last year. I think he's got the speed to get the stolen bases a little bit up. And guy that's kind of hovered around about a 270 to 290 career average. So the average might go up a little bit, but I wouldn't expect too much. So move on to number 20, and I've got the former St. Louis Cardinal, now Chicago Cub, Jason Hayward. Hit for 293, 13 home runs, 60 RBIs, and 23 stolen bases last year. Guy I think can get the power numbers up a little bit this year. Obviously, in the middle of a very, very talented Chicago Cubs lineup. Like I said, I think the home run numbers are going to get up a little bit. RBI numbers should be helped by the fact that he is with the Cubs now. Not to say that the Cardinals were a bad team. Obviously, still a very solid offensive team. So move on to number 19, and I have the number 19, and I have the now Detroit Tiger Justin Upton. So this is on another subject, but kind of a mystery to me why the Tigers went after Justin Upton this year when a Yoenis Cespedes reunion would have made a little bit more sense. But nonetheless, still hit for 251, 26 home runs, 81 RBIs, and 19 stolen bases last year as a San Diego Padre. So he's been a little bit of a journeyman since he left Arizona, and I think this is a guy that can, I'd see his average being more around 260 this year. This is a Tigers lineup that does have a lot of talent, but is definitely aging. So move on to number 17. I've got the Chicago Cubs, Kyle Schwarber. So Schwarber came up, had a very impressive debut last year, and not very flashy down the line, but hit for 246 last year, 16 home runs, 43 RBIs, 3 stolen bases, and I don't know, I think the average number is going to come up a little bit this year. Obviously, still a very young player in the majors, and a guy that will be able to develop a little bit more this year. I don't think he's near his ceiling yet. This is definitely a guy that's got 40 home run, 100 RBI potential. So move on to number 16. I got the Milwaukee Brewers' Ryan Braun. Now, I've seen some people have Ryan Braun as low as 20. I don't think that really makes sense. I think that Ryan Braun is a guy that still has, I still think he has top 10 outfielder type talent. And for me, the reason why I've got him at 16 is the lack of support in that lineup. The Brewers were already going to be bad this year. You're looking at a team that's relying very heavily on Ryan Braun. Just lost Chris Davis, one of the guys that was expected to be one of the major producers in the middle of that lineup. I mentioned that earlier. And then also relying on a Jonathan Lucroy that really had a down year last year, and they're really hoping he's back on the come up. So last year, Ryan Braun hit for 285, 25 home runs, 84 RBIs, and 24 stolen bases. Definitely impressive statistics all over the board. Had more than 20 home runs, 20 home runs, 20 stolen bases, and the 2020 clubs, I wouldn't say extremely exclusive, but it's a club that's pretty valuable every year, whether you're playing fantasy baseball or just having them on your team. So move on to number 15, and I have a guy who had a very impressive season last year, the Kansas City Royals, Lorenzo Cain. So again, Cain put up solid stats all over the board, batted for 307, 16 home runs, 72 RBIs, and 28 stolen bases for the eventual World Series champions, Kansas City Royals. Lorenzo Cain, I'll be honest, just gut feeling, I don't think he's going to do as good this year, but it's just something that he's gone, I don't know. I think the Royals lineup's going to regress a little bit this year. I think that's kind of a general consensus. But anyhow, Lorenzo Cain to me is still a top 15 outfielder in baseball. Actually, that was number 16, so top 16. So move on to number 15, and I have the Colorado Rockies, Carlos Gonzalez. So, Cargo, I wouldn't say a down year, but I think the average dropped a little bit. Last year hit for 271, 40 home runs, so it didn't drop anywhere there. 47 RBIs, 2 stolen bases. I haven't followed Carlos Gonzalez's stolen base numbers too close in his career, but I'm guessing he's had more than 2 most years. So this is a guy that a couple of years ago, maybe about 2 years ago, was considered a top 5 outfielder in the MLB, and I think he can still be at that level, especially hitting in Coors Field. So at number 14, I have the Houston Astros, Carlos Gomez. So Carlos Gomez, obviously a down year last year, which was weird because he was expected to be one of the bigger producers for an Astros team that obviously was the biggest surprise in baseball last year. So hit for 255, 12 home runs, 56 RBIs, 17 stolen bases. This is a guy that a lot of people still expect to be a star this year. Obviously, that's why he's still up so high. And I think that he'll probably get the average back up around 270. I could see this being a 270, 20 home run, 70 RBI type year for Carlos Gomez. So, if you guys are watching the Warriors game tonight, that's actually kind of crazy. One of my buddies just texted me about that. So, move on to number 13, and I have the, New York Mets, Yoenis Cespedes. So, Cespedes last year, obviously a very solid season for the eventual NL champion, New York Mets. Hit for 291, 35 home runs, 105 RBIs, and 7 stolen bases. I think you can expect somewhat similar stats this year, maybe a little bit of a regression depending on how the Mets do. Obviously, this is a Mets team that's a little bit more reliant on the pitching than it is on the hitting, though. So, move on to number 12, and I do have a guy who had actually a surprisingly good year last year, and that is the Seattle Mariners outfielder, Nelson Cruz. No shit, outfielder, but last year hit for 302, 44 home runs, 93 RBIs, 3 stolen bases. So, don't know if he'll be able to replicate the same stats this year. Nelson Cruz is a guy who's aging and should be able to at least maintain I think, above 35 home runs. Again, I think this is more reliant on how the Mariners do as a whole. Mariners are actually expected to do kind of big things this year. I could definitely see that. Like I said, Nelson Cruz is a guy who's aging a little bit. He is 35 now, and I think with a little bit less pressure on the Mariners to be playoff contenders this year, spotlight a little bit off them, I think this is a year that not only Nelson Cruz could be big again, but the entire Mariners team. So move on to number 11, and I have the Pittsburgh Pirates, Starling Marte. So Marte had, to me, a huge season last year. 287, 19 home runs, 81 RBIs, and 30 stolen bases. Obviously hard numbers to get. I think this is the Pirates team that's going to have a better year this coming year. I think McCutchen's going to be able to have a rebound year, and I think the outfield will be big for the Pirates. So move on to number 10, and I have a guy that I think will be massively improved this year, and that is the Houston Astros, George Springer. George Springer had under 400 at-bats last year for the former AL Rookie of the Year. I think this is going to be a very good year. I am hopeful for that. I am a big George Springer fan. And last year he hit for 276, 16 home runs, 41 RBIs, and 16 stolen bases. I think this is a guy that's got... I think that's probably as high as the average is going to go. This can be a guy that strikes out a lot. But I think this is a guy that's got 35, 40 home run potential, 100 RBI potential with the lineup he's in, and can reach 20 stolen bases, which is obviously, all those stats are extremely valuable. But again, that's just all gut feeling and speculation. So move on to number 9, and I have my opinion, one of the guys who had the best seasons of any outfielder last year, and that is the Colorado Rockies' Charlie Blackmon, thinking football there. So, last year Charlie Blackmon hit for 287, 17 home runs, 58 RBIs, and a whopping 43 stolen bases. Obviously, 43 stolen bases is hard to come by, especially actually posting up decent stats everywhere else, almost 100 runs also. I don't know if you can be able to replicate those stats. Again, Charlie Blackmon, never a guy thought of having a huge ceiling in the MLB. But again, I mentioned this before, hitting in Colorado, you got a good, I mean, obviously, it's, in my opinion, the best hitter's park in baseball. Ball carries, and do big things. Now, obviously, stolen base numbers, just all on him. So, move on to number 8, and I have the Detroit Tigers' J.D. Martinez. So, Martinez last year, I think, well, actually, this year, I think he's a lot bigger in the Tigers lineup than some people will give him credit for. I mentioned this a lot. Tigers have a lot of talent, but it is a very aging lineup, relying very heavily on players like V-Mart and Miguel Cabrera that are obviously, like I just said, getting up there in age and have dealt with injury problems last year and in recent years. If they're healthy, I think this is going to be one of the better teams, if not the best team in the AL Central. And I think this is a team which has a lot, considering you have the former World Series champions in your division. Last year, though, J.D. Martinez hit for 282, 38 home runs, 102 RBIs, and 3 stolen bases. I think he can get those same stats this year, and I think he can prove. I think this is one of the more underrated players in baseball as well. Obviously, able to put up good stats all over the board, except for stolen bases. And again, one of the less known names for a top 10 outfielder in Major League Baseball, but I think this is a guy that can put up same type of stats this year. So move on to my number 7, and I've got the Boston Red Sox' Mookie Betts. So I think Mookie Betts has become really the best hitter, at least in the Boston Red Sox lineup. A lineup that's become very reliant on young hitters now. Obviously, Xander Bogaerts being a highlight of that lineup as well. So, Mookie Betts, guy that I've been rooting for ever since I saw him play with, actually, first time I saw him play was Pawtucket Red Sox, and he hit for 291, 18 home runs, 77 RBIs, 21 stolen bases last year. Also a very solid defensive outfielder. I think those stolen base numbers could go up a little bit higher. I think he's got the speed to maybe reach 25, I guess max 30 of stolen bases. Everywhere else, though, put up solid numbers. I think you can expect the same, if not better, numbers this year from Mookie Betts. Now, if you play fantasy baseball, you see he's a top 20 player, which a lot of people is a big jump, but I can actually see that. So move on to my number 6, and I've got the Toronto Blue Jays' Jose Bautista. So, Bautista, I think, is going to... Actually, I won't lie. I don't know how Jose Bautista is going to do this year. I actually think he's the biggest wild card on here. It's had contract talks heading into the season, and like I said, I just think there's a lot of uncertainty around him. He's floated around anywhere from, if you play fantasy baseball, anywhere from 9th I've seen to 30th, and yeah, so I think this will be one of the more entertaining players to follow this year. So moving to my top 5, and at number 5, I got the Arizona Diamondbacks' A.J. Pollock, who had as big a breakout season last year as really anyone. And I think at least by ESPN standards, he actually had the highest player rating of any baseball player in Major League Baseball offensively. I wouldn't say he's the most effective offensive player, but he definitely had a big year. Put up .315 batting average, 20 home runs, 76 RBIs, and 39 stolen bases. So, I don't know if you can expect the same numbers this year. I would say so. I think him and Goldschmidt are a very solid 1-2 combination, one of the best in baseball. And I think that the Diamondbacks lineup is just as good, if not better, this year. I think you can expect guys like Yasmani Thomas to be improved. They dished Ender Inciarte, which I still don't get, but they also did add a little bit of pop to them. Not a little bit of pop, but a little bit more speed to the middle of the infield, with hopefully improved Gene Segura. So anyway, get back to my rankings. At number 4, I've got a guy who ran into injury problems last year, and that is Miami Marlins Giancarlo Stanton. I think that Stanton can be the best home run hitter in baseball. It's been shown that he can do that. In limited action last year, he hit for 265, 27 home runs, 65 RBIs, and 4 stolen bases. I believe he actually had one of the, if not the best, one of the top 3 home run to at-bat ratios in baseball. This is a guy that for the first half of the season was just belting home runs, it seemed, on an almost nightly basis, with quite a bit of distance to them as well. And again, for me, the biggest key to Giancarlo Stanton is the health. That's obviously a big worry for anyone that is a big Giancarlo Stanton fan, takes him in fantasy baseball, anything like that. Again, I believe this is a guy that has top 5 talent in baseball, and a full healthy season will show that. So move on to number 3. I've got the Pittsburgh Pirates Andrew McCutchen, who by his standards probably had a little bit of a down year last year. Hit for 292, 23 home runs, 96 RBIs, and 11 stolen bases. I think the stolen bases number will go up a little bit this year. Maybe the home run number. So move on to number 2, and I have the reigning NL MVP, and that is Bryce Harper for the Washington Nationals. So Bryce Harper really, obviously filled out that potential this past year. Hit for 330, 42 home runs, 99 RBIs, and 6 stolen bases. Obviously, I think that number can continue into this year. He's still very young. I want to say 22, maybe 23. Yeah, 23 years old. So, like I said, still obviously a high ceiling. It might have gotten it. I'm not sure. Obviously, MVP is a good ceiling to have, but again, I think he's contesting for the best player in baseball. He definitely did that last year. But to me, the number 1 outfielder is still the Los Angeles Angels' Mike Trout. So, Mike Trout, again, I wouldn't say a down year, but actually stats-wise is probably a little bit overshadowed by Bryce Harper. I think Trout's still definitely the better defensive player, but hitting stats weren't as good as Bryce. 299, 41 home runs, 90 RBIs, and 11 stolen bases for an Angels team that obviously relies extremely heavily on Mike Trout. For the last couple of years, seems like he's kind of been the face of baseball, and is still, I wouldn't say widely considered, but is still, I'd say, consensusly considered the best player in baseball. So that concludes a very long video about the top 30, I guess actually 35 outfielders in baseball today. Tomorrow I will be coming back. Actually, probably not tomorrow. I'm probably taking the weekend off. I'm going somewhere else. Will not be here. So probably will be continuing Sunday night or Monday with my top. Probably going to be doing top 10 or top 15. I'm not entirely sure. It depends on how I combine it. But I will be coming back with some version of relief or closing pitchers or both. So that's pretty much it. So yeah. Check that out yet. Go check that out. I'll be posting a link to the entire playlist in the description below. So, like I said, come back today with my MLB ranking series, and I will be doing my top 10 and explaining pretty much why. Obviously, I've got every player where they are. I'm going to be doing it very similar to my NBA